Welcome to Marifado. One of the darkest moments in modern history of melanin-dominant people, specifically in Africa, is the 1994 genocide in Rwanda. The darker aspects of Rwanda's history. We know that not only the Tutsis perished, but also Hutus too. The whole world was quiet and watched the genocide. The United States, the powers that be, never stopped it. Guess who was the United Nations General Secretary that time? Our own brother, Kofi Annan. And he didn't do anything. What about the African governments? What about the African Union? Nothing was done by these people. We want to look at these aspects of this genocide under a number of topics. Like, how did Rwanda and Burundi become nations? Who created these tiny nations and for what purpose? Origins of the conflict between Tutsis and Hutus as a lesson for all melanin-dominant people all over the earth. And lastly, we'll look at who are the Tutsis as we continue to explore this interesting lesson. How did Rwanda and Burundi become nations? Who created them? To exist as countries, Rwanda and Burundi are actually legal via the Berlin Conference Act, which is still in effect today. You can see that they do not exist here on this map. Neither can you find them on this map. They were created by Europe. So too every African country that you can think of. So your sovereignty and your nationalism is of European origins. We know definitely when you look at this map that they are very, very tiny. It is very clear that the first nation to colonize Rwanda was Germany, which get control of the African nation after the Berlin Conference in 1884. After 1884, Rwanda was taken over by Belgium, and these were countries or are countries that caused a lot of genocide and the division and confusion in Africa. The Belgian bureaucracy classified all people into three groups: Hutu, Tutsi, and the Twa. It is very clear, therefore, that because of what happened in Germany, the genocide that happened in Germany, we should not be worried and confused why there was such genocide in Rwanda. What are the origins of the conflict between the Hutus and the Tutsis? We want to list them so that we can think about them and expunge them out of our consciousness as melanin dominant humans. Number one, European imperialism created divisions so that these divisions continue to haunt us today. We must remove such divisions, specifically the borders all over Africa and all over the earth. And so-called divisions, continental divisions, must be expunged from our consciousness. These divisions were later used to escalate the hatred between the Tutsis and the Hutus. The European nations did this out of a racist belief which they planted in the Tutsis that they were superior to the others. The ruling Belgium favored the minority Tutsis over the Hutus, and that deliberate goal was they knew that they would exploit this division to divide, to rule, and to continue to rule. The number two cause is African leadership failure from ancient times up to today. From times of antiquity up to today, it leaves a lot to be desired. The number three aspect is tribalism and general ignorance among us melanin-dominant human beings of brotherly love and brotherly cooperation. You can see here that they tell us that there are differences between Hutus and Tutsis. The difference only exists in your mind. The Rwandese, both ethnic groups speak the same language, live in the same places, and are not always physically recognizable by distinctive characteristics, but you have been programmed to say these people are different. Our leadership failure comes with a cost of coups. In 1973, a military coup installed Major General Juvenal Habyarimana, a moderate Hutu, into power. And following independence in 1962, Rwanda-Urundi was split into two. This was done in order to facilitate the divisions and to extend these divisions. Although the Tutsis lost multi-party elections in 1993, two assassinations and a military coup allowed the Tutsis to retain power. When Yoweri Museveni, a rebel leader of Tutsi descent, seized power in Uganda in 1986, largely through Rwandese Tutsi help. He later gave impetus to the Rwandese Patriotic Front to invade Rwanda and stop the genocide in July of 1994. Today, the Liberation Day of Rwanda is celebrated on July 4th every year, the same date with the American Day of Independence. An unusual date. The story here is murkier than the surface. Let's not take everything on the surface. There are codes here. Who are the Tutsis? Who are the Hutus? Who are the Twa? The definitions of Hutu and Tutsi people have changed across time and location. A 1987 study, Genetics and History of Sub-Saharan Africa, published in a yearbook of physical anthropology, found that the Tutsi and Hima, despite being surrounded by Bantu populations, are closer genetically to Kushites and Ethio-Semites. Now, scholars are introducing other terms. Let's be very careful what scholars are trying to achieve here. Remember, the Belgian colonialists believed the Tutsis were a natural superior nobility descendant from the Israelite tribe of Ham. The Rwandese royalty was Tutsi. Belgium distinguished between Hutus and Tutsis by nose size, height, and eye type. Another indicator to distinguish Hutu farmers from Tutsi pastoralists was the number of cattle one owned. What a pathetic way of distinguishing people. Speke, one writer, hypothesized that the Tutsis were black Jews. This became widely held, and by the time the Belgians came to rule Rwanda, it gave them a platform to divide again psychologically by saying someone was Israelite, which means special or chosen, and another one was a Hamite, meaning Hamitic case. This Hamitic myth would be central to the Hutu extremist efforts to mobilize ordinary citizens to commit mass murder of the Tutsi invaders. This was actually championed by the Christian organizations in Rwanda, who broadcast subtle messages to that effect. But we all know, and we must all be aware, that pre-colonial history of all these three groups predates Israelites by hundreds of thousands of years. The Twa, the Hutu, the Tutsi did not arrive in different waves. They originated in Africa and moved northwards and also became part of a great empire up north, Hamitic Empire. Until sometime in 900, there was no general concept of Rwanda. Rwanda as a word refers to a central place with a surrounding area. Rwanda in Chikaranga means to be many, to be more, and to spread all over and to move all over. That's where the English word Rwanda come from. In fact, Burundi, Buga, and other small areas in northern Congo also have Hutu and Tutsi people. Linguistic, same people. If we look far enough, we find the word Hutu to originally mean a servant or a worker or a farmer. You cannot tell me that these are countries that have a history that goes back to predate all of this. It's a lie. The term Tutsi also has changed across time. From beginning, it meant mostly cattle breeders or warriors or herders, just like the Maasai. There was a small group of people who called themselves Tutsis as a genuine ethnic term. These were likely the last people to move back from the Ethiopian area in the Sudan or Sudan today in the north. It's very, very clear. The word Tutsi cannot be traced either in Kinyarwanda or Kirundi or Kiga. This is entirely different where Hutu is concerned, because Hutu can be found also in Angola and the lower Congo, meaning someone who's poor or a servant. It's very, very important and very, very interesting. Tutsis are Bantus of Hamitic origins. When the Tutsi, Wolof, Serere, etc. left the Nile Valley, they did not live with these identities, but rather in the same manner that the Ethiopians say that the Egyptians are a colony drawn out of them by Ausarije, and that Hamit was formerly no part of the continent, but a sea at the beginning of the world. Master that which is very, very important. Kemet, where you see Egypt today, was part of the ocean. You can see it by the Mediterranean anyway. And that it was afterwards made land by the river Nile, the silt that came from the Moon Mountains. Therefore, the Ethiopian emigrants would become in time Egyptians. Can you define here a Twa, a Hutu, a Tutsi here? You can't, because they are all there, they are mixed there. Don't go measuring the noses and thinking that you will be able to distinguish them. In the 1300s, Tutsis migrated into what is now Rwanda, which was already inhabited by the Twa and the Hutu people. Now, this is more proof that the Ankole, the Watutsi breed, was the cattle of the Pharaohs. There it is. There is the evidence. The Tutsi people migrating to Rwanda from the Nile Valley basin after the displacement by the Arabs into the Sudan. This is the history. And they were the Nubians, they were the Kushites, and they were Bantus, and they are Bantus up to today. Here is more proof that Tutsis are Bantus of Kemet, who settled in Nubia along the Nile and then moved down around the 1300s. So this is Pharaoh Ramesses with the gracile facial features of Tutsi. You can see that. These pharaohs all wear a crown that clearly resembles the Amasunzu Tutsi hairstyle. See that? Or vice versa. Ramesses III and Tutankhamun's DNA locks them both with Great Lakes region, which is where we find the Tutsis residing and the Hutus, the Twa. Many Bantu-speaking groups claim to have come from Kemet here, right? But we actually originated here, moved up there, and then we were defeated in various wars. We moved down here, went to the west, came down, settled here, moved across the rivers, the Kasambabeza, settled here. The European perspective says we came from here. According to MRI Imhotep, if the Bantus originated here, while we know that humanity originated in the east or south, where is the movement across? So you see, the European perspective is a lie. It is meant to remove you from the greatest civilization ever to be found on the earth. They also created the Afro-Asiatic language group, which is a lie. This was done only to separate Kemet from African people and try to connect it to Asia. Asia is also an African continent anyway. More proof. See the crook here, right? And the crane, the bird here, Umsambi, crested crane bird. The bird is sacred to the royal Nyiginya clan of the Tutsi and the Chwezi. Not all dynasties has pharaohs brandishing a crook as a symbol of power. This suggests that the Nyiginya rule of ancient Kemet was seen between 18th to 20th dynasties. Again, not all the gods held the crook, but Ausarize did, suggesting that the Nyiginya bloodline may stem directly from Ausarize, locally known as Gisa. Not only is Ausarize seen holding a crook, but his crown has two wing strass and opposite ends signifying Emine or Amen, the Tutsi deity and the supreme deity during Ramesside dynasty. The grey crane is the insignia bird of the Hima, the Tutsi, the Nyiginya, and the related Great Lakes clans. It's very, very obvious and very, very clear and straightforward. We are one people. This is our home. This is where we dwell. And let us not allow anyone to come and divide us. Small countries like Rwanda and Burundi should never exist by any means. Countries that we have today in Africa with all these borders must never exist by any means. There must be 5 states in Africa, not countries, but states. Ethnic conflicts, Tutsis and Hutu conflict in Rwanda. Once Hutus and Tutsis lived in harmony in Central Africa about 600 years ago, Tutsi warrior clans moved south from Ethiopia and invaded the homeland of the Hutus. Though much smaller in number, they conquered the Hutus, who agreed to raise crops for them in return for protection. The two groups lived as one, speaking the same language, intermarrying and obeying a nearly godlike Tutsi king. Remember Pharaoh. Remember the rule. Then they were conditioned to hate and kill each other by the colonizer and the enslaver. This is the problem that we face today among us Bantu people. The darker aspect of Rwanda's history. Since the colonizer and enslaver was aware that Bantus from Kemet migrated back into their homeland in Central Africa, they used the scramble for Africa to divide, rule, and continue ruling. They created tiny paradox and taught divisions amongst Bantus that leads to tribalism, genocide, and extinction. Rwanda and Burundi became nations only to purposefully divide and destroy Bantu oneness. Unit is power. You must remember that. From the late historian, photographer, and teacher Ronoko Rashid, we get this cartoon and teaching. Your brother is not your enemy, and your enemy is not your brother. Know the difference. Subscribe to our channel, Kamiti Buru Ethics. This is Priest Rabbi LM to Bizulu. You can send us an email on join@marifado.com, and also visit our website www.marifado.com. Have a great day. We are one people. Amen. 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 Ra.